All right, good evening, everybody. It is our regular meeting for the Town of Spencer Board of Aldermen for the month of April. And we have all but one of our board members present, so we do have a quorum. We are called to order, and we will begin with the invocation. I don't remember who offered to do that.
I did.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Heavenly Father, I pray for the growth of our community, spiritually, socially, and economically. May we work together to create a place where all are valued, where justice and righteousness prevail, and where the needs of the most vulnerable are met. I pray for those of us who are in positions of leadership within our community. Grant us wisdom, discernment, and humility as we serve the needs of our people. May we be guided by your truth and by your love. And finally, Lord, I thank you for the gift of community, for the bonds of love and fellowship that unite us. Help us to be instruments of your peace, shining your light and spreading your love wherever we go. Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Board, you have before you your agenda for this evening. Is there any need to add or delete any items from the agenda before you? Mr. Francis.
Just want to make a note, number 16 that we had talked about as an add-on. After further research, we've determined that there is not action needed tonight, so that's why it's stricken there from the proposed agenda, but there will be an update, some educational information that the Chief Planning will provide during his departmental report.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else, Board? And if not, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Motion by Mr. Muhammad, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And the agenda is adopted. We now will move into recognitions. We have two proclamations this evening, and I will read those. The first is for National Public Health Week. We have a proclamation. Whereas the week of April 7th, 2025 is National Public Health Week, and the theme is It Starts Here, highlighting the importance of making a difference in our home, community, and town of Spencer, North Carolina. And whereas this year is the 30th anniversary of celebrating National Public Health Week, and in the past 30 years, significant strides have been made in public health, including the following public health successes. 1, deaths due to HIV and AIDS, which peaked in 1994 at 49,095 AIDS-related deaths that year in the U.S., have dropped significantly with antiretroviral therapy, ensuring most people with HIV can live normal lifespans, and prevention tools like PrEP significantly reduce transmission. 2, smoking rates, which were as high as 25.5% among U.S. adults in 1994, have now fallen to 11.4% due to comprehensive smoke-free policies, public awareness campaigns, and taxation of tobacco products. 3, childhood mortality, which was at a rate of 13.8 deaths per 1,000 live births in 1994, has now fallen to 5.4 deaths per 1,000 live births due to vaccines, better health care, access, and nutrition. 4, mental health awareness and treatment, with 40% of people with mental health conditions being untreated in 1994, has progressed with increased awareness, parity laws, and integration into primary care, which have expanded access to mental health services and reduced treatment gaps. 5, lead poisoning, with 4.4% of U.S. children having elevated blood lead levels in 1994, has now fallen to less than 0.5% due to policies banning lead gasoline and reducing lead in paint, pipes, and water systems. 6, health impacts of climate change, such as rising heat-related deaths, were under-recognized in 1994, but are now being mitigated by actions such as public health campaigns, local adaptation plans, including cooling centers and other preparedness plans to protect the public from extreme weather, wildfires, and other regional threats, and global frameworks like the Paris Agreement. 7, pandemic preparedness, which was in its infancy in 1994, has now grown, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, spurring significant advancements in mRNA technology, global vaccine deployment, and increased investments in infrastructure, stockpiles, and global surveillance, all of which must be sustained. whereas racial and ethnic minority populations in the United States continue to experience disparities in the burden of illness and death as compared with the entire population of the United States, and whereas a person's health status can differ drastically by zip code due to differences in the built environment, environmental quality, community context, access to healthy food, access to education, and access to health care. And whereas public health organizations use National Public Health Week to educate public policymakers, public health professionals, and the public on issues that are important to improving the health of the people of the United States. And whereas public health professionals help communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of a full range of health threats, ranging from infectious disease outbreaks to natural disaster preparedness. And whereas efforts to adequately support public health and prevent disease and injury can continue to transform a health system focused on treating illness into one focused on preventing disease and injury and promoting wellness. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me, as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim the week of April 7th through 13th, 2025 as National Public Health Week in Spencer, North Carolina, and call upon the people of Spencer to observe this week by helping our families, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and leaders to recognize the contribution of public health in 1, improving the health of the people of our state, and 2, achieving health equity. As the theme states, it starts here. In witness whereof, I've ordered the town seal affixed by my signature on this, the 8th day of April, in the year of our Lord 2025. Right? And then the next proclamation is for the 56th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week and for our town clerk, Miss Anna K. Ward, on achieving Certified Municipal Clerk designation. First, before I read this, I want to thank Anna for all the time she put in to working towards this certification, and we appreciate the work that you put in and congratulate you on this achievement. And so I'll read the proclamation now. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is a time-honored and vital part of local government existing throughout the world, and whereas the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants and the only statutorily required position for all units of local government in North Carolina, and whereas municipal clerks provide the professional link between citizens, local governing bodies, and various agencies at all levels of government, and whereas professional municipal clerks are committed to upholding principles of neutrality, impartiality, and equal service to all members of the community, and whereas a professional municipal clerk serves as the information hub for local government operations and community affairs, and whereas professional municipal clerks continuously strive to enhance the administration of their office by actively participating in educational programs, professional development opportunities, and the annual conferences of their state, provincial, county, and international associations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk, and in particular, our town clerk, Anna Canode Ward, and whereas Professional Municipal Clerks Week was established in 1969 by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, or IIMC, and is endorsed by the North Carolina Association of Municipal Clerks, or NCAMC, and all other members throughout the United States, Canada, and 15 other countries. And whereas in 1984 and 1994, Presidents Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, respectively, signed proclamations officially declaring Municipal Clerks Week the first full week of May, and recognizing the essential role municipal clerks play in local government. And now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 4th through 10th, 2025 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to our town clerk, Anna Canode Ward, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital service they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. In witness whereof, I've ordered the town seal affixed by my signature on this, the 8th day of April in the year of our Lord, 2025. Thank you, Anna. All right, board, are there any other recognitions this evening? All right, hearing none, we will move to public comment. Ms. Ward, did we have anyone sign up for public comment?
No, we did not.
All right, no public comment this evening. And so with that, board, we will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are set before you. Those are items that were reviewed last week to be put on the consent agenda and are considered administrative or non-controversial in nature. And so with that, is there a need to pull any of the items on the consent agenda for further discussion? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Sledge, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad, all in favor? Right, all opposed? And the consent agenda is approved. We will now move to item 8, which is to consider appointing a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members to our newly formed Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could take a moment just to slightly amend that really nice resolution you read on behalf of the town clerk to add her ability to dispense daily doses of psychotherapy to the staff. She's great. Thank you, Ann.
It's appropriate for Mental Health Week.
Oh, it is. It's great. Back in February, on February 11th, the board adopted an ordinance to create a 5-member Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And in the interim, we have received 6 applications. And so those have been dispensed to you in advance of the meeting for your review. And so at this point, I'll step out of the way and allow the board to proceed as you see fit. And I'll answer any questions you might have in the meantime.
Okay. So, board, you have received the applications to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. As you know, we have 5 spots available per the ordinance that we have establishing that Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. It's a 5-member board. We have received 6 applications that have been shared with you. Hopefully, you've had a chance to review those. I think all of them are wonderful folks that have stepped up, and some have been very involved in the past with the town, looking to stay involved. Others are looking to get involved, maybe new to town and looking to get involved. And so I think that's great. Have a nice cross sector from our community, and I think each person has something worthwhile to be able to bring. So what we need to do this evening is to decide on who we're going to appoint to those positions. One question was raised, since we had 6 people apply and we had 5 spots, was there a way for there to be 6 people selected? There is a way to do that should the board decide to revise the ordinance to add an additional position for a 6-member board. That's certainly an option that would take basically 2 motions this evening. Or there's the option to stick with the 5-member board, and we would then have to pick 5 of the 6 members that have applied. So with that, I'll open it up to the board for any discussion or questions they may have for Mr. Morris.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mind batting leadoff here. With regard to amending the ordinance, I'm fine with that. I think the only thing is that we don't want to leave an even number to break deadlocks. Not that hopefully there's no deadlocks, but we don't want to condemn them to that fate. And I think it needs to be 5 or 7, which would obviously then be 1 more than we have. And I'll say, I don't know some of these folks. Some folks I know very well, but the 2 names that jumped out to me that are must-haves, and not that anyone else is not, but just their experience with this very activity would be Mr. Pendergrass and Ms. Koontz. I mean, I think my thought is we start with those 2 and then we work out from there. I mean, just because, again, they have collectively decades of experience doing this very activity professionally. And that's just my thought.
Keep in mind too, as far as even versus odd, this is an advisory board, so they're not setting policy or anything like that. It's an advisory board.
Yeah.
Thank you for that input. Others?
Well, I won't jump the gun with if anyone has questions, but I would like to make a motion to turn this advisory board into a 6-seat. Because frankly, I think we have a lot of talent in this community, and I'm beyond excited that 6 people were interested in lending their expertise to this. So I would not like to see one of them turned away.
All right, so board, there's a motion on the table from Ms. Moody, and there's a second from Mr. Muhammad to revise the ordinance establishing the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to make that a 6-member board instead of a 5-member board. With that, is there any further discussion on that item?
I believe
Yes.
there's some,
Can we amend that motion to direct staff to draft the ordinance and bring that back to the board? Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
does that present a problem with your timeline as far as, because I know that was one thing you said.
I don't know. To me, it doesn't, but maybe, maybe it does. One of the things I'm trying to accomplish is in the application for the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant, if you have a endorsement by a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, it improves the competitiveness of the grant. So,
And Jay, for that, because of that, the application that we're going to be approving tonight is due
May 1st.
It's the discussion is, are you able to, without having said ordinance in front of you, are you able to make the motion to make that change to the initial adopted ordinance? That was, want to make sure we're procedurally going to step in the right direction.
So, yeah, so I think it would be appropriate for the motion to be that the board approves the change and then directs staff to follow the requisite procedures to amend the ordinance.
and then bring the amended ordinance.
And that way you have the approval to create the board that he can use, and then we can procedurally make it happen.
Does that work for you, Joe, or do you need the names of those individuals?
No, I think we're still able to select the members. The ordinance just has to be formalized.
Yeah.
Right. So we can make the motion to add an additional member. We would formalize the updated ordinance at the next meeting, but we can still go ahead and select the members.
But that's going to throw him off. That's going to throw his timeline off, I'm afraid.
Now, do you have to meet? Does that board have to meet ahead of?
Prior to the application is due May 1st, and so I'll have to meet with a board sometime in April.
So
So the board,
So
the
go ahead
board,
and appoint
the
the
board,
5 that
the board was established.
Yeah. And
Right.
that was the
The
question.
membership was not established.
And so, yes, you can do that, but then I hear that you're adding another person.
That's right.
And so I think you can add another person as an alternate for now. I mean, if we need to amend the ordinance
Good
to
idea.
create a 6-member board, we can do that.
Okay.
But we can appoint the 5 that are in the ordinance now for the board, and then make that change. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was confused.
No,
I was
it's-
told we didn't have that board yet. I thought that meant the ordinance wasn't adopted.
The ordinance has been adopted.
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
to complicate it maybe just a little more,
please don't.
one of the elements of the ordinance is that the board would develop a rules of procedure that's approved by the Board of Aldermen. And so if we take the approach of appointing 5 with an alternate, those folks could meet and have or come up with a recommendation on the rules of procedure that would state 6 members or 7 members or whatever they would suggest to you, advise to you, and then the ordinance could be adopted. I may be just adding something to it that doesn't really need to be thought about at this point, but for the purpose of getting a board together that can review the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund application. You'll be appointing 5 tonight with an alternate. Is that the correct? I mean, is that what you're suggesting? 5 with an alternate?
That would be for right now, yeah.
Okay.
And
It's a
that's
good
only
problem
because we
to
have
have.
6 applications that we want to make that change.
And I think you have 6 viable candidates.
Yeah.
Board. So there is a motion.
I need to amend the motion.
Yes.
So I make a motion to adopt 5 candidates with the 6th being an alternate for now until our ordinance can be updated.
We would need to designate an alternate out of those, or can we just?
Can you just
Yeah,
talk for me
here it
here
is.
and I'll be like,
You've got an ordinance that only provides for 5.
Correct.
We can't just make it 6. You know, we have to amend the ordinance if you want to make it a 6-member board.
Right, which is what we just had a motion was to.
Right,
amend
but
the
you can't amend an
ordinance.
ordinance without a public hearing and notice and all that.
Yeah.
So, and rather than going back and delaying it to do that, you can appoint one as an alternate for now. And then we can take the time and amend the ordinance to create the flexibility for up to 7 board members instead of having a fixed number.
so do I withdraw my motion then?
No. Appoint the 5 and 1 as an alternate, and then direct staff to draft an amendment to the ordinance.
So moved. Can I do that? That was a lot. Man.
All right, there's a motion that's been revised. Mr. Muhammad, are you still seconding that motion?
Thanks, Jack.
Copy. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
We'll get there.
Thank
We'll get
you.
there.
All right, so there is a motion. Is there any further discussion at this point on that motion? No. All
I
right.
wanted to thank the candidates. I was really excited to see 6 applications, see all that experience. It's an exciting time for Spencer.
All right, so there's a motion before you. All those in favor of 5 positions and adding an alternate at this time? All right, all opposed? So that's approved unanimously. And now we need to identify who that alternate will be. Is that correct?
It would be good. I mean, if you're gonna name them all now. yes.
Okay. All right. So board, we will mention the names of those that have applied at this point. Those of you that have, actually, I'm gonna let Mr. Morris do that. Because you have
It's sort of like Peter
quicker
pushing me off
access.
the cliff into that one.
So the applicants include Dion Dixon, Jim Gobble, Vivian Kuntz, Jack Moore, Bob Pendergrass, and Phil Sparger.
Very good.
To simplify, could we just say that the last received application can be the alternate for now until we can amend the ordinance?
Do we know who?
Do you happen to know who that was, Jeff?
Phil.
Okay. Okay. That seems like a logical thing until we get it amended there. That work?
So how were they? How did they come in? Do we know that? Do we have record of application dates or whatever?
The first was, I think they're in order. Dion Dixon was first. Then Jim Gobble, Vivian. Actually, I think Bob was before Jack.
So Mr. Sparta was the last one to get his application
That's
in.
that's my recollection of it. That seemed right. There were 3 of them that showed up within like 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
For simplicity's sake at this point, I think that's the
Yeah.
that's the
Fair.
appropriate thing to do. And then what we'll do is once we increase the size of the board, then he become a regular member. I think the intent to make sure that he would know that that's what our intent is, and so we would need him to be present.
A wonderfully easygoing person.
Yes, he is for sure. Okay. All right. So board, then, if that is the general consensus, we'll entertain a motion to appoint the individuals that you just heard as board members, with the exception of Mr. Sparger, who would be at this point an alternate member with the intent to become a full-fledged member once the ordinance is updated.
I move to accept the 5 as members of the advisory board, with one Mr. Sparger being the alternate. To be added as we update the ordinance.
Okay. There's a motion from Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all very much. All right. Mr. Morris, the next item is to discuss Resolution 25-05 for modification to the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. And the document has been placed at each of your places there. We did have some late-breaking information that sort of delayed getting it into the agenda packet, so I apologize for the same-day delivery on this. But the important news is that we are the recipients of a $250,000 matching grant for this particular application, and we wanted to see that that was secured before applying for a grant with no matching funds. That would have made no sense. And so this board has adopted recreation capital improvement plans in the past. They're typically done as part of the budget cycle. In our case, I'm asking the board to consider adoption of this plan to be included as an appendix to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This is another element of the PARTF application that helps with the application's competitiveness. And so we have, as a staff, gone through some recommended funding estimates that are a guide to help the board plan for future expenditures. Capital improvement plans are not adopted budgets. They are sort of the intent of the community as they move forward and have recreation expenses in time. We started in 24-25, taking note of the $2,300,000 town park that we're building. We have some funding that is being expended related to our EB 5861 design work, $47,000. And then we received this year the $100,000 for the Grants Creek Blueway. And so jumping in, I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but just next year our aim is to apply for, or we'll apply this year, but hopefully be funded in August the next fiscal year for the Sandback Forest Center Recreation Facility. That would be the $500,000 PARTF application. We're also awaiting word on the Great Trails State Grant for the Rocky Branch Loop Trail at $690,000. And then there are other projects that we have identified that would go out in future years that would potentially affect budgets. But as has been the rule of this particular administration, is we have done the very best we can to provide recreation facilities to the community taking advantage of funding sources that add value. And so that's a way of saying we're asking for other resources to help do this. As a note to the contribution of $250,000, we also were encouraged by our friends in the philanthropic community to keep them in mind as we get started with what could conceivably be a $2 million project, but to get started and to come in future grant cycles and request funding going forward. So I have before you this CIP plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. Mr. Francis may have insight as well. So,
Board, I'll just add the one item, that's a little different than what we've previously seen is that item to amend it with the Steinbeck Forest Center and Recreation Facility. So that line item has been added in. And that's specifically what we're talking about with this particular grant. We'll hopefully be approving the application for it.
The only thing I would add is, of course, the Carter family, Mr. Carter and his wife, and of course, y'all have been there recently. But the movement in that property from the life estate the property being donated to the town, of course, is what has put us down the path of this change since the last time we looked at this. If he were still residing there, we of course wouldn't be quite talking about this project yet.
Just one other note is that, and that project has been discussed publicly since 2012, going back to the original My Woods Steinbeck Forest Master Plan that was conducted by it was the North Carolina chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, and it's prevalent in that document. So it's been sort of in the public arena for a long time, but the execution of the life estate, if that's the wrong word, is extinguished. Well, anyway, is there a legal term for it? When the life estate ran its course and he relinquished the life estate, is the word I'm looking for, then it put all of this in motion, and our funding partners became very excited about this possibility.
All right, Board, any other questions?
I'd just like to say that it's wonderful that people like us so well. And recognize what we're doing here is worthwhile. Yes.
All right, Board will entertain a motion to adopt the Recreation Capital Improvement Plan before you, specifically approving Resolution 25-05.
I move to adopt Resolution 2505 to adopt a multi-year Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan for fiscal years 2024 through 2030.
The motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved. You all. The next item is to consider, we'll get a presentation on the master plan for adaptive reuse of 401 11th Street and consider adopting a resolution in support of a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant application, or Park F grant.
So you have seen most of this before. I have a couple of adjustments that have been made in the presentation. Specifically, we are talking about the site at 401 11th Street. I actually got a marker on it that you can see. The site is with an arrow there. The things that we are focusing on for proposed improvements as part of the PARTF grant include recreational program space, environmental education space, a connection to a larger trail network, restroom facilities, ADA accessibility, native landscape, and edible gardens. So those are the elements that are specifically described within the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant application. This is the overall map that shows the various facilities that we have for Parks and Recreation in the community and connections to the town park in downtown, Standback Educational Forest, and the Yaqui River Trailhead Park. This is 401 11th Street, formerly known as the Carter House, owned by Howard and Louise Carter, who donated the property through a life, or sold the property actually through a life estate to the Three Rivers Land Trust, and then that life estate was relinquished, and the land trust has deeded the property to the town of Spencer. Subsequent to that, the town board has rezoned the property to a civic use. There are restrictive covenants in the deed that specify that the property is for a recreational use in perpetuity. This is sort of the rear of the property, the deck on the back, and the sloping lawn down to the split rail fence, and just beyond there's tree line, Standback Educational Forest, picnic shelter, behind the trees, and the small pond that's on the site. This is the master plan that was drawn in combination by Lynn Raker, who is a landscape architect, and then the renderings of the building were done by Pete Bogle and Elizabeth Frick, who are with the Bogle Law Firm. But this is essentially a $2 million plan.
But wait, Bogle Law Firm or
architecture. Sorry,
architecture.
Yeah, right. Sorry, my apologies. You know what I meant.
Say it real quick 3 times.
So the staff told me on the way in that because I have the most items, I have to bring donuts in the morning. So I'm going to try.
I know where I'm coming in the morning.
Joe, I heard it was for the meeting. For the meeting. Yeah, you've already missed it.
I missed it. I'll have to get right on that.
He's taking everybody to dinner afterwards.
Hey, good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I'll second that.
So the board has seen all of this, but the idea is to build a complex, a natural complex around an existing structure, adaptively reuse the building, specifically around accommodating educational groups that use it. I've received a really wonderful letter from Horizons Unlimited today in support of this project. It's very nice to be part of the application. This has the potential to be a real centerpiece for our community. It will be where if you're trying to find the Standback Forest, that you will be directed to this trailhead entrance. It has the potential to be sort of a welcome center, house park staff, to have small recreational meetings, exercise classes, clubs, arts and crafts activities, summer activities for kids. All of that can take place at this facility. This is the original plan that was drawn by Pete and Elizabeth, which takes into account the idea of building a pergola on one side that would be sort of a landing space for children who come in school groups, a place to get off the bus and go to these series of picnic tables on the right. That will be in a future phase. That's a $300,000 expenditure that we would likely take on in the future. This is the elevation drawings that address all of the various accessibility issues getting around the building, taking into account the slope of the lawn. And so what I'm showing now is actually the scheme that came to me just this afternoon from the Bogle firm. This will be what is described in the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund application. It's a reduced scope project that takes care of the main floor of the house, sort of reduces the overall square footage of the restroom facilities and the deck on the back of the house, which is actually a covered outdoor classroom space, and it sort of phases the redevelopment of what is really the garage space now and the basement. That those would be, as we move forward through time, that we would be able to take those on as additional projects. It would look something like this. It still has a port. That top drawing has sort of an ADA accessible porch with a portico on the front. It changes the access to the deck just a little bit so that you'll come to it from the parking lot side, and then there is the photovoltaic panels on the building, and it's a covered porch. The porch where the deck is now would be a covered porch with the picnic tables under it. So that's the proposal for the part of application, and that will fit within the $500,000 budget. That was one thing that's missing is there'll be some additional landscaping, some native plant landscaping that will be done around the accesses to the building, and Lynn has not gotten those to me yet, but I'll have them in the next day or so. But it'll be a reduced scope landscape, recognizing that the pursuit of the landscaping can be done again over time. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Board, any questions?
So you said you're decreasing the size of the bathrooms, is that correct?
So there was a code condition that Pete circled on, that the size of the addition was, I believe, was over 750 square feet. And most of it was in a sort of a custodian's closet. And by reducing it below 750 feet, the code requires that there's one ADA accessible approach, and it'll be a sidewalk coming from the parking lot. When it was larger than that square footage, there had to be a pathway around the other side. So what we're losing is some storage space, but we're still getting the number of fixtures within the restrooms, and nothing really changes as far as the restrooms themselves.
Okay.
The deck space, the outdoor classroom, goes from being large enough to, in the original plan, to have 6 picnic tables to 4. So there is a reduction there.
But then you still have the picnic tables over on the side.
Yes.
With the
Mm-hmm.
pergola.
Yes.
I remember that the bathrooms were a real key factor with the grant money.
But this particular scheme does not diminish that characteristic.
Great. Board, other questions? And if there are none, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 25-02, supporting an application for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant and master plan for the adaptive reuse of 401 11th Street?
I'll make that motion, please.
Motion by Mr. Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? And that's approved. Thank you very much.
Hot donuts now.
Yep. All right. Board, will move forward. The next item on our agenda is for Mr. Blunt, discussing a potential annexation along Long Ferry Road. Mr. Blunt.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. As you became used to in the past year or so, we go through a certain process when an annexation petition comes in. And we have received a petition on parcel 051-052 which is addressed as 1230 Long Ferry Road, but only a small portion of the property actually fronts Long Ferry. The majority of it is on Willow Creek, so I think of it as a Willow Creek property instead of a Long Ferry Road. You can see in this slide where the site is located. It's in the northeast quadrant of the I-85 interchange with Long Ferry, and you can see on that slide the little piece that's fronting Long Ferry and the big piece that's on Willow Creek. I say you're familiar with the annexation process. You're also familiar with this area. These are some of the projects that we have brought to you in the past 2 years, and some of those are now coming to fruition. This is a zoomed in look at that particular parcel. It's currently undeveloped, nothing on that parcel at all except trees. And this is getting right down to the parcel so you can see what it looks like. This project started out with a young lady coming in and talking to me about a business she wanted to locate to Spencer. And she had found this property and was interested. And the more she explained it to me, the more excited I got because it was an unusual project. She plans to build a 30,000 square foot, 3-story building on this site. And the first floor at this point would be retail, and those are some of the uses she has mentioned. The second and third floor would be a consolidation of offices from her 7 current locations scattered through the Piedmont of North Carolina. So she's bringing all of her offices into one location, and Spencer's the place she wants to have it. I'll show you another slide. The site's at 20 acres is much bigger than is needed for that office building. Her business plan shows her initial investment at about $12 million. This is a timeline that she had in her business plan. We don't usually get this kind of detail up front, but I thought you would be interested that at least at this point, her plan starts now. She's already purchased the land. It's in her name. Design work has already started. Selection of a contractor will happen next month. They negotiate, they permit. She sees construction starting at the end of 2025 in November, and then occupancy of that building about a year later. This is what a 10,000 square foot footprint looks like on that site, and then an area in black that's needed for parking. So as you can see, that's a fairly large amount of that property that's left for expansion and growth. And also that little oddball piece that's actually fronting Long Ferry is big enough that it will make a great out parcel for something in the future. I snuck this one in after your last meeting. It always amazes me, and I've seen this picture numerous times, but this was the Wachovia Bank building on the corner of 5th Street and Salisbury Avenue here in Spencer. And as old as I am, I can't remember that building being there. But at some point in this town's past, it had a 3-story building that was about 30,000 square feet by my estimate. And that's what you're going to have again. So it's an exciting time for Spencer. The zoning part of this, when we annex a piece of property, if it's not in our ETJ, we have to change the zoning because part of it's zoned Rowan County's RA zoning classification. You see that little wedge plus the out parcel is zoned Rowan County's RA. The rest of it's already zoned C85 by Spencer. It's in our ETJ, so it works out just fine. This would be our timeline as far as what we're going to do as far as the annexation and the rezoning. I won't read through all that because you're aware of how these things fall. The action tonight is asking your clerk, your highly efficient clerk, actually you need to pass Resolution 2503 directing your clerk to investigate the petition for sufficiency. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, you have questions?
I do have a question, as usual. That piece of property that's there on Long Ferry Road, is that adjacent to the gas station that's there, or?
No, there's a power substation. The gas station's a little farther to the left. In fact, you can see the buildings in that plan right there. In between the gas station and this parcel, there's an electrical substation for the power.
Okay. Because I remember that there was going to be some kind of a divided highway there in front of that gas station. Is that going to
In the
impact?
Long Ferry corridor study, there is divided highways suggested through that area, plus a signalized intersection at Willow Creek. And at some point that will happen. I'm not sure this project will tip DOT into requiring that, but you remember when we were looking at that 80-acre parcel farther down Willow Creek?
Right.
That, in all likelihood, would have tripped DOT into requiring a signalized intersection at that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
So it will happen sometime in the future.
But that's doesn't impact this project at all at this point then. Okay.
Board, any other questions? I've got one question for Chief Lanning, given that this is a 3-story building. Impact on fire service.
A single 3-story building, but we just need to keep that in mind as we are progressing development. That could create a need for.
Good to know. Thank you.
And following up on that, you do have some industrial buildings in the work that will be at least as tall as this building. So it's not an unusual need that we'll have in the future.
All right, board, any other questions? If not, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 25-03, which would direct the clerk to investigate the petition to annex this property at 1230 Long Ferry Road?
I move to approve, to adopt the resolution 2503, directing the clerk to investigate the petition to annex.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All right, all opposed? That is approved. And our highly efficient clerk is prepared to present us with the results of her investigation. Ms. Ward.
Yes, I have investigated, and although I am highly efficient, I forgot the certificate in my office, but I did find it sufficient, and I can go grab that if you need to see the actual certificate that I have signed.
I believe the unsigned copy is in the packet.
Yes, the unsigned copy is in the packet, along with the information I had used.
Okay, very well. Board, any questions for the clerk? If not, is there a motion to accept the certificate of sufficiency for petition to annex this property? So, motion by Mr. Muhammad to accept.
Second.
Second from Ms. Moody. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that certificate of sufficiency is accepted this evening. All right, the next item we need to consider is to adopt resolution 25-04, which would set the public hearing date for the proposed annexation of this property. Mr. Blunt.
This again is a procedural requirement. Normally we would set the public hearing for you, but in this case the statute says that you have to pass a resolution setting that public hearing, and we would suggest setting it at your pre-agenda meeting in May.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. So, board, the resolution 25-04 sets that public hearing date for our pre-agenda meeting in May. All of that public hearing will be publicized in the paper and all of the different avenues for appropriate public notice. Are there any questions on that? If not, is there a motion to adopt resolution 25-04 for that public hearing date?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Moody.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Howell. Is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve, or all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that's approved. All right, thank you all. We'll now move to the next item, which is also Mr. Blunt. He's giving you a run for your money, Joe.
We'll split the cost of donuts.
He has to bring the coffee.
As you remember, no PowerPoint to go with this, and I did provide a memo for you to give you the details. But at your last meeting, you authorized your manager to negotiate for a $50,000 micro grant from the North Carolina Railroad System. He did such a great job negotiating that they dropped the $50,000 grant and gave us a $100,000 grant. So that's the good news. Bad news is that $100,000 grant comes with 20% match. So again, negotiating as well as he does, he talked Samet, our developer on this project, into paying for the match. So it's not going to cost the town anything. This should come close to being enough money to complete the brownfield study. So what we're doing is asking you to authorize the manager to negotiate the $100,000 grant with North Carolina Railroad, and also to negotiate a sub-recipient agreement with Samet, authorizing them to pay the 20% match and authorizing us to give them the $100,000 to do the brownfield study.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, other questions on this item?
Can we, just for posterity and congratulations to our manager, can I repeat that? So it was 50. Your efforts talked up to 100.
So Mr. Blunt is being a little kind in the characterization of what happened.
He's giving our manager all the credit.
Yes. So what I'll say is we were trying to align the concept of the agreement with the grantor, the railroad company, and the sub-recipient agreement with Samet. And in the course of working all that out, the railroad company said, well, actually, we think this bigger grant would be better. But Mr. Blunt was very much involved in a lot of that. And I probably did suggest that, I don't think we had 20,000 sitting around to match it. And, it all worked out. But there we go.
The railroad has also identified an additional grant. I think it's $750,000 that they think this project will qualify for in the future. As the project moves forward and Samet designates a certain number of the sites to be rail served, then they would cough up another $750,000.
The other thing to keep in mind, we were the recipient of we were one of the communities that was a recipient of Brownfield grant through Central Carolina that was ultimately from the EPA. And so we are, still moving along with that, but because that is funded by the EPA, given all the funding things at federal level that are going on, that is a little slower moving forward. Still, everything points to it moving forward. So, obviously time is money in these economic development situations. And so Samet really wants to move to go ahead and do all the preliminary investigations to understand what type of remediation might be needed on the site. So that's why being able to get this funding and get them started, to get them to a point then that then they can coordinate with Central Carolina and those grant funds come into play with their consultant that they're using. It's just trying to keep the ball moving and keep things, keep making progress while we wait on those other funds.
What is the time period for all this as far as that goes? Did he give you an idea?
North Carolina Railroad, you might remember on the $50,000 grant, we kept asking, do we need to fill out any more forms? I filled out something online, and then one day the grant just showed up in the mail.
Right.
This one's about the same way. It's going the same way. I keep waiting for them to tell me if I need to fill something out. So any day now, I expect something in the mail. Here's your $100,000. We will have to, the manager will have to, that's what you're authorizing him to do, is to negotiate. So we have to read through that agreement and make sure we can live up to what they're asking us to provide. And then we have to write a separate agreement, sub-recipient agreement to Samet, really to make sure that they do the work that we're getting a grant for. So once we receive it from North Carolina Railroad, it will move very, very quickly. But I can't tell you exactly when that'll be.
Any other questions?
This is fantastic.
Sure is.
Hearing no additional questions, is there a motion to authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute the contract with the North Carolina Railroad Company, Economic Development Microgrant, and then also a sub-recipient agreement with Samet?
I'll make the motion for you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I ain't gonna repeat it, but then you.
That's
you know
fine.
what?
All of that. I did that for you. Trying to help out.
And I'll second all.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Miller, and a second by Mr. Howe. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next item is to consider awarding a historic preservation incentive grant in the amount of $1,806 to Edward and Debbie O'Connell to replace a pressed tin shingle roof. Mr. Harris.
All right, good evening. So I think y'all, I keep coming up before you to talk about these grants. Well, I'll admit it's because we're at the end of the fiscal year and I'm trying to make sure I'm spending all the money. But at this point, you're familiar with the Historic Preservation Grant Program. These homeowners are, they actually live right behind us on South Yadkin Avenue. They are great. They have been meticulously restoring this house. If you look in your grant, agenda packet, you can see photographs of the house, and they have been working on it slowly but methodically over the past several years. I think they actually joined, they moved here around the time that I started with the city, and I got to know them. But of course, roofs are always kind of a big ticket item, and they did request some help to pay for the roof. The house has a original pressed tin shingle roof, and a lot of homeowners nowadays, even in the historic district, may try to get away with putting in a shingle roof or maybe some sort of synthetic pressed tin shingle roof, or excuse me, a synthetic roof that replicates a pressed tin roof but would be like asphalt. But they are purists when it comes to historical preservation, so they have identified a appropriate pressed tin material that substantially replicates the appearance of what's on there right now. They did properly receive a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission back on March 3rd. And the permit was approved without any conditions, so they did comply with the historic district standards. And essentially, they're just asking for $1,806 to assist with the overall cost of the project. They would have been eligible up to $2,000, but their total cost was only $3,296.45, so half of that is the amount that they have requested. You can see that they have already paid for all of the items. So at the back of the packet is the paid receipt for the materials that they ordered, and Mr. Ed O'Connell is going to be doing all the work himself. So there will be no additional labor cost. So are there any questions?
Just as an aside, I'm doing the thing, I'm asking a question I don't know the answer to. Could we get, and I know we're past the spring newsletter, but would they allow us to put something in our summer newsletter about this? I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, and we should, sometimes we get up here and complain about what folks are doing. We should celebrate this. This is very well done.
I think they'd be game. I can talk to them about putting a success story in our next newsletter. Also to advertise that the program still exists.
Yeah.
Because we've advertised in the past, so people generally now know that the town has some limited home grants available. But I don't think we've ever spotlighted a success project, and this would be a good one.
That would. How much money's left in that line item?
Me and Heather checked earlier today. There's a few thousand left, but it's not much. I think we'll be able to pay for one more project, but we're spending the money.
Yeah.
That's my commitment to you.
All right. Board, is there a motion to award the Historic Preservation Incentive Grant in the amount of $1,806?
Make a motion to award the Historic Preservation Incentive Grant in the amount of $1,806 to Ed and Debbie O'Connell to replace the pressed tin shingle roof.
All right. There's a motion by Mr. Muhammad. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. I think she beat you to it, Mary Tim. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that's approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you to the O'Connells for the work that they did. It looks great.
Sure does.
All right, board, as a reminder, we'll dispense with item 16 that was previously on the agenda as we approved tonight. And then item 17, we'll move to that, and that is to consider approving our audit contract. And so with that, we will invite Heather forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In the ordinance cover sheet, I put on there just some of the details about our selection from the audit firms that proposes that replied to our RFP. If you have any questions about that, with the $25,000 charge is one single audit.
It includes the single audit.
It includes one single audit. If there is a need for an additional, with this firm, it's $3,000.
Are y'all familiar with that term? So when we exceed a certain amount of federal dollars, grant dollars expended, then we have to have this separate process they call a single audit that increases the cost. So we are anticipating that for the next few years.
And these are not the folks we've been with, or same folks at different name, or?
So it's actually Nick was with us before I got here. He was with RHCPA, but recently they split, and he's with Strickland Harding now, and that's the firm that we chose.
So same project manager,
Same,
I guess.
yes,
but
he was,
different,
yes.
But different.
So
Right.
my understanding is when we first selected RH, I think the split had occurred, and the partner we were working with at RH at the time was Nick. And that first year, it went well from his standpoint. We had a variety of issues from the previous provider that was a lot of challenges to work through. Of course, you'll recall the timeline issues and all that sort of thing. But in terms of our work with that partner, he was good to work with. He did a good job presenting, etc. And then he later then left that firm and went to this other one now.
Are they located at the same place?
He's located in Lexington,
Well,
but
I know,
not
but
at the same place.
it's not the same address.
We have some continuity, though, I guess, in terms of personnel.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Although
There's
it's been two audits now that he has not been a part of it.
Right, he has not been a part of it, right.
Okay.
And we reached out to John and just to kind of get a consensus with everybody. Peter and John and I all looked through the proposals to make sure that of the right one to fit us. And we feel that Strickland Harding is the perfect fit for us, just because of, we have a relationship with him. The fact that there's 3 people that will be on site 75% of the audit time, and the firm is small, and just with my lack of experience, I feel like they would be the best fit for us.
Board, any other questions? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the audit contract with Strickland Harding PLLC in the amount of $25,000 for our upcoming fiscal year 25 audit?
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Second by Ms. Moody. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move to our departmental reports. Mr. Blunt, planning.
Mike, if you'll bring up that other presentation. You do have my department report in your package. I'll be glad to answer any questions about that. And then I have another brief presentation to make, really just to help Joe out with the donuts tomorrow. So we're tied now.
And the coffee.
All right, board, any questions on the planning report from Mr. Blunt? Okay.
We have another small development, this one on Montclair, which is off of Long Ferry Road. That developer contacted me today talking about signage and expressing the interest in having a sign large enough on his property that it will be visible from I-85, which is a reasonable expectation for I-85 frontage property. Although I knew that I researched our sign ordinance and found that under prohibited signs, it says you can't have off-site billboard signs. And then the only sign, and I apologize for this being so small, but the only sign that we list in our list of signs in Chapter 17 is what's called a non-residential pole sign. And as you see there, the maximum square footage for the text area is 12 square feet, and it can only be 10 feet tall, which is much too small for an I-85 sign. Talked to the manager, and we discussed some various things. So I went looking for somebody else's ordinance to steal, as we normally do. And our neighbor to the south has solved this problem by applying an overlay district along I-85 and at the intersections next to their city. And what I wanted to do tonight was bring this concept to you. We won't actually bring you a text amendment until next month, but I probably need to get it in the hands of the planning board on Monday night and then advertise it for a public hearing and have a public hearing at your pre-agenda meeting. So I wanted to at least get this concept in front of you so you would understand what we're going to present to you next month. So this is Salisbury's ordinance. And as you can see, they created two different overlay districts, one for off-site billboards, one for on-premises, what they call pylon signs. Excuse me. They drew a circle around each of their intersections and took it out to 1,000 feet to allow certain signs in that area. And then they come up with a very simple table, and this would be something we would probably copy or consider copying, giving you the maximum square footage of the sign based on the minimum height and maximum height of the sign. So the higher the sign, the bigger the sign can be. To give you a little flavor of what my concerns are and why I'm pushing this a little quicker than I normally would, those stars represent projects that we have in the pipeline that would likely be impacted by the limitations that our current sign ordinance has. The one I just presented to you, one of her comments was that she was trying to locate that 3-story building in a place that would be visible from I-85. So I-85 visibility is important to all these projects and properties, including our truck stop that's coming along, and they will obviously want to have a bigger sign than our ordinance allows. This was a real quick and dirty sketch just to give you an idea of what the corridor would look like. This one is based on a 1,500-foot radius from the center of the intersection of Long Ferry Road and I-85, and then 500 feet on either side of the center line of I-85 to catch all those properties that I showed you with those stars. So again, this is something I'll bring to you in more detail next month. I'll give you all the text ahead of time so you'll have a chance to review it. But this, billboard signs especially, are controversial. I don't like them, but my opinion doesn't count. They are needed for advertising. The advertising industry is pushing very hard in state legislature to continually loosen the regulations on where they can be located. This is of more concern with the pylon signs, on-site pylon signs advertising businesses that count on the I-85 traffic to attract their customers in. So I think this is a reasonable concept. The devil's in the details, and I'll get those to you next month, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have tonight. And if you don't have questions tonight, please get in touch with me with any ideas you might have in the coming week.
Thank you. Board questions?
Would the signs, do they have to be located on property owned by the people putting up the signs?
That's the difference between an off-site billboard and an on-site pylon.
Okay.
They may look exactly the same, but the off-site obviously is somebody renting a piece of property just to put a sign on. And it could be a company that's located in Timbuktu that's putting a sign out there.
Right.
That may not be something you're too interested in helping people with, although there are a couple billboard signs out there already.
Right.
I'd love to have a giant Visit Spencer
Yeah.
billboard, you know?
Well, one of the sites that I pointed out is our site, the Yadkin River District. I think at some point you would want people driving down I-85 to know it's there. So with judicious trimming of some trees, I think you can see it from I-85.
That's where the controversy comes in. It's about cutting the trees for visibility. from the
And that's
signs.
always been the fight with the advertising industry. They want to cut more and most people want to cut less. So I did some Google Maps road view and looked at I-85. Most of the vegetation is fairly low and flat in this area. So I don't think tree cutting will be a problem, especially if you get up to like a 200-foot tall sign. I think it will tower over anything that's out there. I didn't get into the details, and I'm not going to try to, but in Salisbury's ordinance, they do have some specifics on what the signs have to look like, how they're constructed, quality type issues. We will include those in the text that we present to you. We want to keep it classy. One of the questions that my manager and I kicked around was, do you want to expand this concept any further? Up and down Long Ferry Road, for example, because there's going to be some fairly large commercial industrial buildings in that area. Probably not. At this point, I don't see any real reason. The only reason to have a tall sign is so it's visible from I-85.
Yeah.
And once you get outside that 1,500-foot radius, nothing's going to be visible from I-85. It certainly would be visible from Long Ferry Road, but there's no need for that. You can do that with a smaller sign.
Any other questions, board? All right. Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
We'll be back next month.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next is our code enforcement report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think you have in front of you the monthly code enforcement report. Chief Al was gracious enough to leave me with this beautiful red hot file here, so I'm gonna do my best to go through what he's got here. So code enforcement for this month, he had 35 cases. He's showing 31 open as of current, with 4 voluntary abatements and 2 NOVs that were distributed. And if there's any questions about the code enforcement report, I will try my best to answer those for you.
Okay. Board, any questions on the code enforcement report in your packets?
Any problems we need to be aware of?
Not that I've heard wind of right now. I do know that he has had several he's working on. He was in training today. He was actually at Central Line today in code enforcement training. So I think he, when he came in, just talking to him, I think he got a lot of good information out of that training. So to bring back to us, but not that I've heard in particular.
All right. We'll move to the police report.
All right, and you have your customary police report. Just a few things he's highlighted here. We did have, the guys are still doing a really good job with the school checks, 281 school checks this month. Park checks, obviously, 73 down here at 8th Street Ballpark. They're doing a good job keeping an eye on that. Library Park as well. Yadkin River Park, nearly 100 at each one, so doing a very good job on that. And then as far as your ACE team report goes, they had 10 cases in March, 119 traffic stops, 38 total arrests, with 9 of those being felony arrests. Made 195 charges, served 4 warrants, and did seize 1 firearm off the street. And seized some drugs this month, 14 grams of marijuana, a little bit of fentanyl again. Still seeing some of. I think that number's not as high as it has been, but there's still 0.1 gram of fentanyl. So any we can get off the streets is good. So if you have any questions about the police or code enforcement, I can maybe be more helpful than code enforcement anyway.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions, board? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Fire Department, Chief Lanning.
Mayor and board, how are you this afternoon?
Good, how are you?
Well. You have my written report before you. I know Peter had kind of alluded to earlier, I'm gonna go a little in depth, not extremely in depth, because I did provide a link for y'all. It's about a 25-page document. I don't want to read y'all 25 pages, nor do I feel you want me to read you 25 pages. But I did want to go in just a little bit about the relief fund that was brought up last Thursday. We did a little bit more digging and realized maybe what we thought we need to do, we don't need to do. So the firefighter relief fund was established in 1907, and the gross premium tax for the county, the funds are pulled from that based off who has fire and lightning protection. The county gets an allotment. Let's say that we provide 5% coverage to the county's overall district, then we get 5% of that tax. That's kind of how that's divvied up. For our relief board trustees, which is what we had kind of discussed last week a little bit, was we have a board of trustees that is 5 individuals. Position 1 and 2 is elected internally by the fire department members. Position 3 and 4 are elected or appointed by the governing body. So for nonprofits, it's their board of directors. For obviously our organization would be y'all as the board. And then position 5 is appointed based off of my recommendation to the state fireman or state fire marshal's office. And so with that is every January I have to submit our annual roster, certifying training records, so on and so forth. And with that, I also certify my relief board trustees. At one point there was a term limit. There is no longer a term limit. So the 5 that we have, until one of them decides, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, fortunately we don't have to replace those. And just for information, currently our chairman is Jody Everhart. Our treasurer and secretary is Carrie Smith. And then our state appointed member is Sam Morgan. And then the internal appointed members are Wayne Comer and Don Sells. I am a part of that. I have, again, as the fire chief, I can be an appointed member of that 5-person. I'm perfectly fine not being. I'm in the meetings just because the direct correlation between this standalone group and the needs of the organization. So, and then there's a whole list of ways we can spend that money. The number one purpose is to pay beneficiaries of if someone was to lose their life in the line of duty or if someone becomes destitute. Other than that, there's a couple options. I'm actually scheduling a meeting with them in the next couple of weeks to pitch the idea of a supplemental retirement plan. Again, it's just something that's approved through that. We take those funds, which right now we're in excess of. I get a letter every year. We're not getting any more money because we're like 30,000 over, which is positive. At least we're not 30,000, in the negative. But to create a supplemental retirement, once people are within Spencer Fire Department for 20 years, whatever that set amount is, we give them on a monthly basis out of that pool of money. Scholarships, and then looking to fund our NFPA mandated annual physicals out of that fund. So there's a couple things we can do to trim money out of our operating budget. I know there's a lot I threw at you, but any questions?
Any questions for it?
And like I said, on the bottom of my report, there is a link that you could follow for the full layout of that program.
We appreciate the high points, though. Thank you
Absolutely.
for putting that in layman's terms. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right, next is Public Works, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
I get the right paper here. Just a reminder that the leaf backs, they're looking bad weather towards the end of the week, so we'll probably lap into next week just to make sure that everybody gets covered. But this will be the last 2 weeks for the leaf backs to run. But then we'll be back to bag for the remainder of the summer till October. Everything will have to be bagged. We will be closed, Town Hall and ourselves on the 18th, but it won't affect anything with our trash schedule for Good Friday. We did have our spring giveaway, mulch giveaway this past Saturday. We delivered 10 loads to towns and we had 8 citizens come get it. So we still have plenty. If anyone would want some, just please let me know. We can work out a delivery plan. I have 2 already scheduled this week to deliver, so they saw it on Saturday. We are planning another day of carrying, and I put on here that it was May the 1st. Is that still a correct date?
think so.
Sounds right to me.
Okay, I still think it's May 1st. I was hearing some, so I
haven't
just wanted to
heard
make sure I didn't pass along bad information, so. I think it is the first
I think
over
it is,
at we worked with the elementary school last year, so we'll be working with the high school this year. So kind of keep an eye out. We'll be looking for volunteers that want to participate. So, let's see. We have hired a gentleman for our manager's position. He started yesterday. So I didn't want to throw him to the wolves all at once. So I'll bring him in and introduce him next week, or next month at the board meeting. So everything's working out good. We kind of overwhelmed him in 2 days. So we'll see how the rest of the week goes.
Well, go easy on him, so he'll be
Maybe
here
we should
next
send
month.
him the donuts tomorrow.
Well, we wanted to see what he was up to, see what he was capable of. No, he's doing well. He really is, and we're easing him in, letting him learn the positions and that kind of stuff first before we completely, bombard him with everything. So it's working out really well. We did have the opportunity. I know all of our people have, but I want to say a thank you to the Salisbury Academy. They brought us some gifts today for participating. I wasn't at the shop when they delivered them, but the guys, they brought some goodies. So we just want to thank you for let the people know that we think that. And one last update, the CCAP. As if we're tired of kicking this can, so we're going to move on. So I met with Levi and Chris on Friday. They showed me the areas that they wanted to concentrate on. The main area being between the ending of the other project and Pickett Avenue. If we have money left over, we'll move down and do the right side, which is at the back side of the dam, which comes down to Spencer Avenue. I met with the contractor today, so he's getting me some prices together, and we're going to move this as fast as possible to get into June. Talking with Chris, as long as we have equipment and it's being worked on by the end of June, then an extension won't be a problem, as long as we get people on the ground. Just have to work with the contractor schedule. That's where we're at. So he's pretty available right now, which hopefully that'll make him move pretty fast. And we're hoping to get that spot done between Pickett and the end of our other, and then that way we'll go after some other funding or something for the lower end. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
I did confirm May 1st is the affair.
It is day of, okay, very good.
I had someone had questions from citizens about the survey, the stormwater survey. What is that about?
It's for the stormwater planning grant that we received, and what they're doing is they'll be doing some surveying on the property so we can map that facility. So we did send out a bunch of letters. I should have mentioned that.
Okay. That's
I
what
don't remember. It was
when
100
they mentioned, when they said Hazen, and I said, oh yeah, I think that's, yeah.
That's what it is. It's for the stormwater planning grant. They're surveying all the pipes, inlets, outlets, creek beds, anything like that that we put on that map.
We're getting an inventory,
Okay.
so we'll have GIS, we'll have all the information in there, and that way then we'll be able to map the system and everything like
Okay.
that.
So I
And
didn't.
it's basically going out and figuring out what we actually have in the ground.
And what condition it's in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I didn't know what
Existing,
the scope of it's for the
what
whole
it's
town
made
then,
of, right.
really.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of all over, and I think the letters, it was like 178 properties that are affected, that we sent out letters, just notifying people, but they will go to the door of any resident if they're at home during the day and let them know that they will be on their property and who they're from and that kind of stuff. We just want to kind of preempt, saves a lot of phone calls in the end. So, but they'll try to get in touch with someone if they're at the property before and they'll just be surface mostly. They may do some measurement of pipes and stuff. They're not going to do any demolishing or anything like that.
When they said Hazen, that kind of triggered it, and I said, "Oh, I think this is just a survey." Yeah.
That's what it is. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
That's good.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. All right, next is finance.
I think we had So, before we get into the numbers, I just want to let you know a little bit about what we've been doing in the finance department. We've signed up for some instructions through the league. So once a month, all three of us are going on the webinars. It's like an hour and a half, and some of the things that they covers, basic accounting, bank reconciliations, year-end closing and audit, revenues and collections, expenses, purchasing, billings, collections, and payroll. Just kind of give us kind of a refresher for Christy and I, but kind of bring Allison up to date on some of the accounting functions and just give the free way to bring her into that, just some learning on that aspect. We will also start our conversion to Black Mountain software in May with sending in some of the reports and numbers from Southern Software into Black Mountain. So that starts next month. And then with our numbers, I've noted a couple things on the report and try to give you guys just a highlight of some of the things that stand out to me. The investment earnings are still behind. We were a little bit ambitious with that, but as we get some of our funds back in from our project, we're going back into the investments with that. North Carolina Capital Management Trust is still projecting that our interest rates are about the same until the fall of this year, and they're looking to be about 0.25% different lower, which is fine. That's just one area that I have in concern. We're still looking to sell the old fire engine, but I think we're making some progress with that. On the revenue side, we received an additional grant. That's why that line is 201%. And a couple of other, one of the line items that we've discussed last month as well is our fees for collecting the taxes for the fees that we pay Rowan County for collecting our taxes. Peter, you had a meeting with them about that. Was there any inclination that they were going to keep that rate the same at 1.35%, or are we still going up to that 1.5%?
That we haven't actually had the chance to meet on that
okay,
topic.
I thought you did.
Yep.
Okay. So then, on the administration side, the biggest thing there was contract services. I failed to budget for our financial consultant services, but we have at this point we found some funds in another part of that and adjusted that budget line. So that has been corrected, as well as the insurance bonds of $173.45. That's been corrected as well. In our police line, we have some overages due to on the medical services line, and that's just for unplanned testing. Insurance of vehicles, that's where we added the F-150, and I'm leaving these in there so that we can make adjustments one time instead of every little bit. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Same thing with fire. The addition of the new engine was insurance there. Overtime there, we have submitted for the reimbursement for Hurricane Helene relief. I'm not sure if we're going to get those funds back before the end of the year, but we will keep you updated on that. We've had discussions.
Well, what I would say is, it sounds like we're 300 some in line, and I think they're working on number 60 right now. So
Don't hold your breath.
It
Right.
sounds like it may be a while.
Correct me if I'm wrong, there was an average of 10 per week that they were looking at.
Currently they're processing approximately 10 reimbursement what they were
But we have identified some savings in there and some a plan of approach for that. So we'll keep you updated on that, and we're keeping an eye out on that line item. The next is the streets budget, again, overtime, and then maintenance of buildings. If you'll notice that line 351, that's for the wiring for our new compressor. And Joel and I have talked about that as well. And we are looking at to adjust that with some of the savings in his salary position. And I think on back to Fund 30, that's been for the 173.81, that's been corrected. And then the Yadkin River Trailhead, that ordinance was approved tonight to move those funds, and we're going to be able to close out that fund by the end of the fiscal year. And as far as our ARPA, Fund 91, final reporting on that is due by the end of April, and that's already been completed last week. I'll let you know if anything comes of that, but I doubt it because everything was already there. And as of this report, our downtown park donations, current balance is $210,664. I think we've received a few more dollars in there since then, so things are looking good on that aspect. So. Are there any questions?
I guess, are there any concerns? I mean, we're now 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, so we're tracking right on with our expenses.
Right.
What's the concern with the lag in revenue, especially with the investments being behind?
I think I don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. I don't know how that's going to plan out. If we can get some of the funds in there, we can gain some momentum with that. But I know it's not going to be $80,000. So, I mean, yeah.
So, I mean, are we projecting that we're going to end the year in a revenue deficit compared to expenses?
On that, with that line item, yes, but as far as an overall, I think we can make up some of the difference in other areas because some of our evaluations are different with other revenues.
Yeah, and I'm talking overall.
Overall,
right?
I think we will be fine with the way things are trending. I mean, there's some other things that are a little bit concerning with sales and use tax. We've got the estimate for April, which is not accounted for here, and it's a little bit below what we expected. But we had made some momentum throughout the big first of the year that kind of offset it a little bit. Just keeping a close eye on that and seeing how that goes.
And some of the data from the league that we got recently was showing positive movement on sales tax, and for Rowan County, actually better than average movement. And so we're hoping that this last report was some sort of oddity or blip. The next month will give us a better picture of that. But,
Could be an April distribution means that it was February sales, and a lot of times that February is where the dip comes through after the holidays and stuff. So that's what I'm hoping for.
With the investment income, I know we talked about it last month too. I mean, what are we? Are those? Is that interest interest payments, or what is that?
It's interest payments. Because we put all of our all of our investments into North Carolina Capital Management Trust, and because the rates are higher there, as in whenever we keep them in the truist or the general fund, so just keeping that balance of what we're spending versus what we can invest and keep in that account. It's pretty liquid as well. So, and then we had a project that we're still waiting on funds from that I was anticipating to be invested in, which I'm hoping that we should get those back in the next week.
Gotcha. Okay.
so that has been the main issue is the cash flow of waiting for several $100,000s in grant reimbursements, and not having that being able to sit in the cash management, essentially.
Our board, any other questions?
I was asked by someone how we thought the tightening of some of the things at the federal level are going to affect us as far as grants are concerned. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I don't have any thoughts on it. I really haven't paid attention to anything going on with that.
I have some
Sorry.
So, the only federal funding that we are making use of right now are ARPA funds and our CDBG grant. So the only one that could potentially be at risk would be the CDBG, because ARPA's basically.
Right.
I mean,
Although,
that's
Mayor, I'll note that our CDBG is through the North Carolina Department of Commerce.
Right.
So they have the funds in hand that.
But it is federal funding coming down, correct? That they're administering.
I believe, and I'm looking towards Kyle. I believe the state received the funds long ago.
The pass-through grant.
Yeah.
So they're federal funds.
Yeah. So all that to say is basically any grant program, we would get funds, even if it's from the state, if it's administered by the state, but it flows through the federal government. Those could be at risk. But the majority of the ones that we are getting are state-funded recreational grants and those sorts of things, so those would not necessarily be at risk. So far, North Carolina's still been very committed to parks and recreation and those sorts of things. I think it would, any type of federal grant we would be applying for, should that come up, that would be a concern, I think, just not knowing where things are headed with that. What I am hearing is a lot of the grants, though, like grants. So, for instance, there have been some, I think, EPA grants, like our Brownsville grant. That's another one that is federally funded. There was kind of just a short pause in that, but many of those are still moving forward. So, I think the reality is those that are really being impacted are grants that are received from nonprofit organizations. Those are the ones that are struggling most right now. And we've got a lot of nonprofits in our community that we know we're struggling.
Well, that was kind of my answer to the individual, that we didn't have a lot of federal money coming in. So, okay.
All right, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our library report, Ms. Ward.
Good evening. So this past month, Librarian LaCroix put on an event with David Wisn't. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I can't get that in my head. And Sandra Ardoin, about their experiences with writing, and so that they could convey some advice to anyone who is aspiring to be a writer. And then this month, on the 21st, there'll be an event for the younger children, ages 3 to 10, with springtime crafts and stories. And then there'll be another event. This one won't be until mid-May, but this is going to be, her larger event that she does for the springtime. It will be, she's titled it Springtime in Paris, with T.C. Costello, who is an accordion player from South Carolina. And it looks like he has been various places around the world and studied accordion playing in Spain as well. And Spencer Deli has donated some croissants for the event. So just make sure that, since there's limited seating, you pre-register for this event.
All right. Board, any questions on the library report?
She sent something out today that said that there was a flyer attached, but there was no attachment.
Yes, I'm working on creating some. That was for the two events. This month in May.
Okay.
Yeah, so that should go up tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move now to the town manager report, Mr. Franzese.
Okay, well, I wanted to add on to what you heard from Joe earlier. Next Tuesday, a week from today, will be our next Talk of the Town event, and that will actually take place at 401 11th Street at the Future Forest Center. And the part of application and the plans there will be the topic. So we'll kind of have an open house and allow folks to come in and explore the property and see the plans, and that it's good to do because, of course, we want folks to understand, but it's also good to do because it's very helpful in your part of applications. The more you can specifically engage with the community related to the plans. So that's coming up, and we're gonna amp up the publicity. We did put the date out earlier in the year, but we're gonna announce the topic and the location and such about that. So the other item to note that we've been doing a lot of work in the old building. Actually, I understand Mr. Miller saw some of the artifacts maybe in the last few days that we had to question. We wondered if you might be interested in some.
Real quick, no.
Yep. So, but staff's been doing a great job of continuing to delve through the items that were remaining in the old building, and we are going to be in a good position to open up for nonprofits and governmental entities to come in on Thursday, April 24th, to procure whatever they might be interested in, and then on Friday, also the morning of Friday, the 25th, the same group, and then open it up on Friday afternoon, the 25th of April, for any individuals to come in, and we'll do private negotiated sales of, whether there's a chair or bookcase or maybe a carnival game, who knows, that will be available. And
can I state my claim to the stain on the carpet in the old mayor's office?
I don't think there will be much competition for that.
Yeah.
I think you should get that framed.
Now,
I don't want it for me. It's worth saving.
We as an entity
maybe
should
take
have
a
it.
picture and leave the hazardous materials for the professionals to handle. But that's going to get us in a position to have the contractor come in May and handle the abatement that's needed in that building. As far as our town park construction and campaign, as you heard, we've made very good progress, and the last month there's been a lot of participation. By my count, and we haven't received all of the dollars, but when you combine pledges, commitments, etc., the total is at $285,398. So that puts us just shy of $100,000 to go to our goal of $385. So we feel we remain confident that we're going to be in a good position to reach that level on the campaign, and really appreciative of everyone being involved in that. The other item that is mentioned in the report is a summary of following up on our planning session in March. There is a draft key priority, which I just now am observing my typo where I wrote 2026-26. It should say 2526. But that aside, any feedback that y'all have on the draft priority list will be helpful to us as we continue to put the budget together, and that will, of course, be a key component of the budget document once recommended.
All right. Board, any questions on the manager's report?
When we start work on the 6th Street or Salisbury Avenue project, people are going to notice, I'm sure, and it's going to resurrect conversation about what are we going to do with that. Just informally, any I know that's a conversation we've had before, and a conversation I'm sure we're going to have again, but any thoughts on that, or are we still kind of waiting to see, or what?
So the things that we have talked about are the ideas, and it hinges back to our needs with our fire department, and a decision on whether we proceed with a fire department expansion in the current location, or whether we make use of that property as the location, will kind of determine whether or not we retain that that property and build something new in its place, or whether we sell that property and allow somebody else to develop something there. Of course, that's all depending on our ability to fund the project, and of course, transitioning into discussion about the budget, that's something in terms of funding a project like that. That's where a funding mechanism like issuance of debt and that sort of thing is going to be involved, and the money's not going to grow on the trees for that project. So, so far, we've had some conversations with colleagues and other organizations about use of financial advisors to help program and plan and figure out those sorts of things. And I think that's going to be a thing that we're going to need to consider here to help us move in that direction with being better able to plan those sorts of projects.
Any other questions for me? All right, hearing none, we'll move in then to a pre-recommendation budget workshop.
Okay. So in front of you is a sheet of paper that's double-sided, and the front side it has a lot of numbers. It has a chart. I kind of tried to slide it underneath your pile of things, so hopefully you don't see one there. Everybody got it? Okay, so I'll talk through this, and on the back side, I've got a summary, but certainly appreciate, of course, all our staff getting this process started with departmental requests, and Heather and I have had the chance to put this together as a high level, but just to kind of work down the page. Are we still looking to locate one of the sheets?
It looks like this.
I stuck it in here.
Okay. Everybody got it?
Yep.
Okay. So the very top table that you see, it says under estimated revenue. That is a table. First, it says assessed property values. So that is explaining from the left to the right our current year of property assessed values. The second column is our estimates for values for the upcoming year. And then that far column to the right is what I'll say a conservative estimate of maybe what we'll see this time next year. That represents 15, well, we're looking at on the assessed real property values, you could see it roughly a $4 million difference there from one year to the other. And then beyond that, another 13 million or so going forward to the next year. Now, we've heard about a truck stop being built. There's a similar type of property on Peeler Road that the tax value of that is about $10 million. So if maybe counting half of that was where 5 million comes in, and then the remaining of that was looking at we're expecting some townhomes to be built in the Hawkins Meadow project, 140 or so of those. That's going to be happening over time. It's not going to be happening all at once, but say a quarter of those get built at a price of $200,000. That altogether, if that were to happen in the next year, I think we could see the valuations, the assessed values moving in that direction. And so the next batch of information you see below that, it says estimated revenue each, and the word penny is missing. I'm sorry about that. That shows us the value of each penny on our tax rate. So from the current year at $37,225 to what we're projecting for the upcoming year based on assessed values, $38,354. Of course, the more the assessed values go up, the more that penny is worth, right? And then so that impacts what your tax rate is going to do in terms of revenues. So looking at all that together and factoring in the 98% collection rate we have, you can see our ad valorem revenue, what we're projecting for the next year is gone from just under 2,100,000 to adding about $50,000 of real property revenue, plus a little bit as well, another 20,000 on the vehicles. So some modest growth there. That's assuming the same tax rate we currently have now. And again, for every penny that changes, it changes that number by a little over $38,000. So tax rate goes up 10 cents. That's $380,000 in the general fund, just for reference. The other thing I'll note before we move on is if you're projecting forward a year based on the assessed values going up as it could, and the change in our value of the penny, the same tax rate that we have right now, the 60.5 cents that we're projecting, would bring in roughly $2.3 million when you combine real, utility, personal vehicles, all that sort of thing. Applying that same tax rate on the increased values, that goes up closer to 2.4. So again, we're talking incremental changes at this point. Now, if we have significant development above and beyond this, significant growth, that's what will start driving those factors further along. Any questions about any of those numbers? Okay. So the other revenues you see there, the next line where it says other ad valorem, those are prior year unpaid property taxes that are collected, as well as penalties and that sort of thing. The next line is specifically the municipal vehicle tax, the extra $10, half of that going to the general fund, half of that going to the PAL bill fund. Again, that's one that we have a lag in that revenue in the current year. We think that's an administrative lag due to the rollout of that over the first quarter of the fiscal year. You get your notice in advance from the state to renew your vehicle registration. So we lost a few months of that as that process was rolling out for people who had already gotten their renewal notice. So assuming the same number of vehicles in town, that's a relatively flat revenue, although as population increases, that can increase over time when you're adding vehicles. Sales tax, we've talked a little bit about that already, but what this projection is showing for the next fiscal year is a 2% growth factor on our current year sales tax. We feel pretty confident at this point it's going to land somewhere between 1% and 2%. This is a 2% projection, but it could be that by the time we get to May, we may determine, well, we think we need to go to 1%. Every percent of that sales tax change is going to be worth $11,000. Just for context on that. And then the next two revenues are a variety of miscellaneous revenues. The one that says proceeds, that is things like beer and wine tax, and I believe that's the primary driver of that one. Again, modest kind of 2% growth on that one. The next one down is really a key driving factor of our revenue picture for the next year, the miscellaneous revenues. And that's where everything else comes along, the things in our fee schedule, grants, and so on. And you'll notice a significant decrease there. And those two, the biggest changes that we're factoring in for that, one is the loss of the ARPA funding. For the last 3 fiscal years, we've had $1 million of ARPA funding to flow through our budget as a revenue. The first year was $500,000, and that freed up local dollars to do other things. Y'all are familiar with our supplanted funds plan that we worked through. So it was $500,000 for the first year, and then the last 2 fiscal years it's been $225,000, and now that as a revenue source has gone away. Also, the investments, we're planning at this point to conservatively budget on the investments for next year, so that we don't be at this point this year and have to try to figure out why they. Although we imagined a conservative projection at this time last year, we want to plan on something less. So we're planning on half of what we planned on for this year. So those combined with a few other things represent the biggest change. There was also a $75,000 pass-through grant we had from the Department of Commerce that is not in these revenues. Now, of course, that's not going to be in the expenditures either. But just to kind of help you understand what's going on there with those revenues. So all that together added up, again, the line that says total, this year, our revenues, and this, what I'll say about this is no appropriation of fund balance, no appropriation of capital reserve. This is really just operations and personnel and kind of these recurring revenues. We're in a scenario where it's going from a total of about 4.8 million to about 4.5 million, change of about $328,000. That's assuming the tax rate stays the same. And again, just as an example, the column next door where it has a blue shading, that's showing you a 1 cent change in the tax rate, and then you see a $38,000 change in the revenues, and it can extrapolate from there. The next column again, I have the difference there where the assessed values that we could foresee a year from now, with again the same tax rate we have right now, representing an increase beyond that amount, going to about 4.6 million. So any questions about revenues? Okay. So then on the other side of the equation are expenditures, and what we're trying to demonstrate with the next chart is kind of where we are and how, as in terms of departmental requests that have come in, there has been no balancing, no cutting. Again, this is just kind of a raw figure that this is what we're going to be working through. And I'll say it may look like a lot. We're typically having to work through these kinds of amounts in one form or another. And so it's part of the process. You're just getting the picture at this point. But the first column is what I'm calling the continuation amount. And so it shows in the personnel row about $3.5 million, and that is taking all of our current positions and continuing them. We have a few positions this year that were partial year funding. It is increasing the funding to capture a full year, and so that is that number is bigger than our current budget number is for that. But that's why it's for the full capturing the full year. It is not changing any rates of pay, any no increases. It's just maintaining what we have. Under the next number, the 1.2 million, that is our operational budget, and it is basically removing the amount from our current year operational budget of any one-time expenses and putting a modest 2% growth factor on it, and that's where you come to that number. and then I'll talk about the next column in just a moment and how it relates to it. The row below where it says debt, it's debt service. That is our current debt service that we already have programmed into our budget. It's covering the town hall loan. It's covering the garbage truck, and it's also covering a lease purchase we have on some police equipment. So that, you could see that totals up to about 4.9 million. And just, if we were going to take that right now and needed to balance the budget, we'd be looking at, based on the current tax rate, a gap of about $450,000. So the column next to it where it says new requests, it adds a few things in. One is the implementation of the salary study. You'll recall we talked about this during the planning session. The recommended model for implementing had a price tag of about, for salaries across our departments, about $178,000. When you add the 30% of other costs on top of that, when it comes to some of our retirement benefits, other benefits, and then the FICA expenses that we have, that 30% factor brings the cost to about $230,000 to do that implementation. And then what's noted there is operations, the 311, almost 312,000. That represents all the other requests in the budget that are beyond the operational amount that I described before. So, and it's not necessarily new things or new stuff. Sometimes it's in cost increases in contracts. Of course, some of it is new stuff, but that's just high level, letting you see the difference between kind of the incremental increase of operations based on the 2% versus kind of what else we're looking at and going to need to figure out a way to fund. And then the debt service addition is the $49,660 that will come due in November for our fire truck debt service. So then the next column totals all of that together and reaches a expenditure request that we've received in of about 5.5 million. That gives us about $1 million out of balance as we stand right now, and that's where we get to do the work over the next month. So on the back side, I've got a few notes there. We've really already talked through all of them, but that's just there for your reference. The only other thing I want to mention is that the table on the bottom of that, it shows just any change to the tax rate, what the impact on what I'll call the average property owner are. The last time we checked, our average residential property value was about $187,000. So this is actually using a value higher than that at $275,000. So for that property owner, for every penny we make a change on the tax rate, we're looking at about $29 for the year, or $246 a month. And in either direction. If it goes down, they pay that much less. If it goes up, they pay that much more. So high level, that's kind of where we are. I know it's a lot, and that's what we're going to be working through over the next month. But want to just make you aware at this point kind of where we are, taking everything in and seeing if you had any questions or any feedback for us as we continue through the process of getting to a balanced budget recommendation.
I've got one question. So, obviously I understand the new request, but based on continuing expenses, understanding personnel, in that we have positions that were budgeted for a partial year, to be a full year, but I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. I know we had ARPA supplanted funds, but that allowed us to do some of these other projects that were one-time expenses. Why we're, $450,000 different in our current expenditures if we would carry this forward compared to the projected revenue. I mean, that's significant. So where's that coming from?
So the current expenditures that, some of the current expenditures that we have in our budget are balanced through, at the end of the day, we will at times appropriate the fund balance to help balance the budget. I don't have it in front of me, but in our current year, I think we started out with around $100,000 or so as a revenue to balance the budget. As the year progresses, we may or may not, on the average year, we actually don't wind up using that as the budget evolves through the year. But that's part of that amount, is that we're not factoring in any cash that we're putting into the budget. Now, say this fiscal year, and we're still not quite to the point of seeing that picture, but say this fiscal year we wind up with $150,000 of revenues over expenditures. Well, my recommendation to you at that point, and this will sound familiar to you, we'd like to appropriate that into next year's budget and as a revenue. So you're not seeing that at all in the scenario here. Okay. That is part of it. And then the other
goes back to my question: are we actually going to see that this year? Heather doesn't want to say yes or no.
Oh my God!
I'm not feeling real positive about it, so, and I'm a pretty positive guy, so. Yeah. Okay.
Question, I guess a comment and a concern. I think I said this maybe back in March or February, but I'll say it again. I cannot vote for an increase in our tax rate. And I can't foresee a circumstance where I can support that. So, for me, the blue column doesn't exist. I'm just being upfront. I think the concern would be, and I know I said this in March as well. I understand the league. They're smart folks. They're looking at sales tax stuff. They're way smarter on that than I am. But as a business owner, and I'm reading the news, and I'm a news junkie, I have some real concerns that the sales tax numbers they're actually not only going to go up, they're going to go down. And I have some real concerns about that. And that's not you guys. That's policy choices being made. They're going to impact the way people spend money. I just have some real concerns if we go, and I get this number, if we want to follow the league's number, that's all fine and good. I'm not questioning the decision. I'm just saying that if we're looking at a tight budget where we're trying to squeak something in, I think we better look really carefully at that sales tax number, because I think this time next year, if we don't, we're going to be going, man, I wish we had. That's my thought on that.
Well, I think, when you're hearing the news about, fluctuations in the market and that sort of thing, it just kind of squeezes you and think, maybe I ought not buy that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think sales tax may be in decline. I think we spent a lot of money during COVID because we were at home and we went on Amazon and bought lots of stuff, and we had, a surge in those sales tax figures. But I think I'm seeing it tightening.
It's going to be a fun one this year. And I say that very facetiously.
I would like to ask, at the end of the planning session, of course, on this, and there may be more time needed on this topic, but the implementation of the salary study was identified as a consensus item, as a top priority. And, if there's any feedback on that at this point, it would be helpful.
I think we've got to find a way to do it. I think the question is, are there options for how we implement that, as opposed to taking a $230,000 bite at it all at once? Mm-hmm. It may have to be a phased approach.
Sure,
that's the reality.
And so there are definitely options, a phased approach, and it could be one that we have a plan A that we start with, and if things improve, it could move to a plan B. It could accelerate, etc. A phased approach could mean it may not happen in July. It may be that we program to start in January and evaluate where things go. It could also be other methods of phasing it. But there's certainly options.
I wanted to make a comment because I don't think we can say this enough, that I appreciate your attention in this pre-recommendation budget workshop to every single penny and how it affects the people of Spencer and our budget and really what we're trying to do to build our community while taking care of everyone who lives here. So I don't think we can reiterate that enough, and I'm really thankful for your attention to how every single penny affects the people who live here. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
And I know I always say we can only control what we can control, which is true here. But I do want to underscore that decisions made at other levels besides our municipality affect us, right? And, we're seeing that, trends in the economy and things. They impact us, not just the town, but each of the citizens as well. So, and I think you're seeing and hearing some of that. We're in some unknown waters right now, and I think that's got all of us a little concerned about how that shakes out with our budget. All right, board. Anything else? Any other questions on the pre-budget presentation? Thank you and staff for working through this.
The other thing I'll just mention in terms of a timeline going forward, just so you have these dates in mind. I meant to say this one already. So of course, this started with our planning session in early March. Our departments have been working on it since, and they started inputting the data into our software towards the end of March. And then we've immediately started our meetings. We've already had our first round of meetings. I think we will have more meetings. Those will continue with departments. And then we do have opportunities that we can have additional workshops if needed. We can likely have one towards the end of April. We're targeting to do a recommendation on May 8th. It could also be on May 13th if we're still trying to tweak some things. And then we would have another opportunity in May if needed, that we could have a special meeting for another workshop. And then in June, once we get to June, we would be scheduling a public hearing for the pre-agenda in June, which would be June 5th. And that, of course, is potential for another workshop opportunity. We are targeting for an adoption at your regular meeting, June 10th. But if we're not ready for that, of course, then that would require a special meeting at another time, sometime before the end of the month.
All right. Thank you very much. Board will move into comments by mayor and board members, and we'll start with Mr. Miller this month.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of I'm speaking on behalf of the Community Appearance Club. I'd like to express our appreciation to Mr. Raymond Powell. Mr. Powell is an instructor in carpentry and woodworking at RCC. And him and his group, his class, came out and donated the wood and built a new produce stand for the community garden. We'd like to thank them for that. That volunteers as far as that goes. The last of the month, I think the 27th, that's not correct. We are having our spring fundraiser. This will be a tea party. Starts at 2 o'clock, and this is to raise funds for future projects for our community appearance. And also, starting next month, we 2 months to spend some money indirectly from the town for the Jefferson Street Park, which is the park behind Bojangles. And we've got some plans in place that we will start, and we might be asking for some help on some of that as far as that goes. And the last comment is, I think I'd like to express congratulations to the town of East Spencer, because I think if everybody read the newspaper, their development is really taking off. And even though they're right across the tracks, they're kind of our sister town, and anything they do affects us and vice versa to that way. So congratulations to the board and the mayor and the town manager in East Spencer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Moody?
I just want to again thank everyone tonight for coming with your reports and your concerns, and invite the citizens to join us moving forward, because I know we all just want your input as much as possible if you're able. I can't miss the opportunity to remind everyone that April is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Which is near and dear to my heart, but I know we all care about the kids in our community and in all communities. And so I just wanted to say that we know that more than 1 in 10 children at this point will face sexual abuse before they turn 18. It's a very real problem. Those numbers stand here in this community as well. Human trafficking, online solicitation of minors gets worse every single year. And so the number one thing that we can do as a community is report our suspicions of child maltreatment, of child abuse. And I want to reiterate that by saying that we as individual citizens are not being asked to perform investigations and find proof. We are being asked to report our suspicions to our local law enforcement and social services departments. And that is how, as a community, we protect our children. So I always just like to repeat that whenever I have an audience. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Mr. Howe?
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
I think just briefly tonight, how wonderful between the development that we talked about for annexation and the grants that we talked about that Joe talked about, and donations for the park and other projects. I mean, literally, there are millions of dollars tonight that are inflowing into our community from people wanting to invest one way or another in our town. I think that's just phenomenal. Rarely a week goes by that you all don't have some just phenomenal, wonderful news that I don't know, a decade ago, not only does it happen, I don't know if it's even foreseeable, let alone, on the drawing board. And of course, Ms. Secret sent us some stuff earlier in the week. I'll let her talk about that. But I mean, how just wonderful and great time to be here. So well done, and that's you guys, and that's our community. So well done.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Ms. Sledge?
I wanted to remind everyone that the senior luncheon that is supported by the town and put together by Ruffy Holmes will be on May the 6th at Oakdale Baptist Church, and you need to register for that. And there's a flyer on the front of the building, I believe, out here, and there's also, I think, something on our website about the way to register for that. If there's not, there will be, according to our phenomenal town clerk, who always gets those things done. I had the opportunity in the last couple of days to drive through the mountains of North Carolina on my way to pick up or to hold in my hands a little dog that I'm buying and going to bring home with me. But I was still. This was the first time I'd actually been to the mountains since the hurricane hit up there, and there is still an amazing amount of devastation in that area. So I just want to remember those folks up there who are struggling and say a prayer for them. And if we can do anything to be of service to them or help them anyway, I'd like to see that happen, because I mean it's incredible the damage that is still there. I drove the back roads, little twisty roads, and was behind a Amazon tractor trailer for a lot of the distance, so I was able to really look at things because we were just barely moving. But it is dismaying to see what's still up there that needs to be done. So, as much as we enjoy the things that we have, I want us always to be mindful of those people who are struggling, whether it's here in our community or whether it's across our state or our nation, and just keep that in mind. And do what you can, where you can, when you can.
Mr. Muhammad.
First of all, I want to say excited about all the growth that still continue to happen with here in this town and across, the street in East Spencer as well. But the funds that we have been receiving, as my constituents already stated, but thanks to the department heads and all the staff here to, continue to help make this community thrive. I know this past month I was invited to the Breakfast at the Stone, and also Alderman Sledge was in attendance as well, as usual, monthly. But I know Dr. Shirley Disler, who's over Brick Ed, spoke there as the keynote speaker, and also attended the EDC board meeting, as well as Alderwoman Sledge as well. Mr. Shelton always invites us to come. But I just want to say, that I'm proud to be a resident of this town and proud to serve this town, and hope that everyone, residents, please continue to get involved, come out to the meetings, ask us questions, bring us, your concerns.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to mention 2 community events that are coming up that I hope some of you will support and be able to participate in. Monday, April the 14th, 5 to 8, down here at Fleming's Bakery, they're having their first Table 10 community dinner. Amy, owner of Pinocchio's, and Quinta, owner of Fleming Bakery, are working together to do this, and it's going to be done the second Monday of each month. It's going to be a 3-course meal with salad, entree and 2 sides, and your choice on that, and a dessert. It is sit down, no takeout or anything. It's only $15 each, or whatever you can pay. And they are going to be, if you can pay more and you want to donate, it will pay for someone that doesn't have the funds to do this. So it's a wonderful thing that they're doing, and I think we really, really need to try to support them. That's 5 to 8, 6 days from now, right down here. So I hope some of you can show up. The other thing I want to mention is another community garden event, and Spencer Presbyterian Church is hosting this. We're going to have an Easter sunrise service in the community garden this year. And if it rains, we'll just move it into the sanctuary, which is right next door. And see, from what I understand, your church is providing breakfast afterwards.
We are. The Methodist Church is joining the Presbyterian Church, and also Bethel Methodist is joining us. So it is going to be around 7 o'clock. And after services, everybody's invited to come up to the Methodist Church and have a full breakfast.
Okay. So hopefully some of you will be able to attend that also. And I am very, very proud of everything that we've done in this town and the way we're coming together. And I think the fruits of everyone's labor, especially our town staff, is really showing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a few comments, couple activities that I had this month that I wanted to share with the board. I had the opportunity to go with the Chamber on March 25th for their legislative advocacy trip to Raleigh, and had some good meetings with our elected representatives at both the Senate and the House, as well as DOT, about some of the larger projects that we have going on, trying to advocate for some of those, not only for ourselves, but also for our neighbors in East Spencer, with the interchange project that they're trying to move forward. We all are in Northern Rowan County. So I was glad to have the opportunity to do that. Peter and I had an opportunity to meet with the EDC yesterday, I guess it was, yesterday morning. Had a very good meeting with them. We're so appreciative of what they do to support economic growth within the county, and also the work that they're helping us do here in the northern part of the county as well. Thank you, Ms. Sledge, for your involvement and commitment to being involved with that group and keeping up with what's going on. They had very good things to say about what's going on in Spencer, so it's exciting. The other thing, I had the opportunity to go to a career day at a local school a couple weeks ago as well. And the funny story I wanted to share with you from that was I got to represent my engineering career and also being a mayor. And the best question of the day that I had was, what do you do when you get mad as a mayor? You get angry. And I said, I bite my tongue. I said, it's the one position that you really can't show how you feel. So I thought that was very, very comical. But apparently they think mayors get mad. Anyway. The other thing I wanted to share with the board, we are at the time of the year that we do the manager's annual review. So we will plan to do that at our May pre-agenda meeting, if that works for everybody. What we'll do is we'll have our pre-agenda meeting and then we'll have a executive session afterwards to do that, which means I will need to get you all of the forms and everything, the rubric and all the information ahead of time. So I will look to get that out to you hopefully this week, if not this week, early next week, so you have plenty of time to do it. Again, we do it via computer. If for some reason you're not able to and want a hard copy, we can do that and then input the stuff for you. You just need to let me know. But we'll ask that we get 100% participation from everybody this year because it is very important. Our manager does a great job for us, and we want to be able to offer feedback accordingly from everyone. So, any questions? All right. With that, we are at the end of our agenda. Is there a need to go into executive session this evening? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by second. Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All right, all opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.